Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Brian. I'm the host of the Left of Greg show. You're going to be watching the video version of our audio podcast. Please, guys, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more content on there if you're already a subscriber, and a better way for us to get you guys some more stuff. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. Check out our links down below to get a hold of us and to actually find out more places where you can get more information about this. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook at HBPRNA. Remember, all these cases that we discuss and all the discussions that we have are through the lenses of what we call human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. So please like it, share it, tell your friends about it, and we hope you enjoy the show.
I think we're live.
That means we are live, Greg. Okay. All right. Well, everyone listening, thanks for joining us. And don't forget, you can follow me on Facebook, and you can follow along when we pop up live occasionally and do this. But to jump in today's topic, Greg, we are going to be discussing, specifically discussing intent. And this is something we talk about all the time, meaning especially when we're talking about human behavior, because basically what we do is, we try to understand human behavior better, right? View something, understand the situation so that we can determine someone's intent, so that in order to determine someone's intent, so that we can, then do predictive analysis, right? Come up with what's likely going to happen next, right? So that's the whole idea is, and we focus very, very, very much on intent, not so much motive, right? Which is a term, we'll define all these terms here shortly. I just kind of want to give a brief overview. And because that motive gets into a whole bunch of different areas, right? Just turn on the news when they talk about, not even just crime, just talk about human behavior in general, right? You're going to see people talk about, well, there's, they did this because of different religious reasons or political reasons or social reasons or different ideologies, right? So people really, really talk a lot about ideology, the why someone would do that, because just as humans, right, we want to understand, well, why would someone shoot up a school? Why would someone kill themselves? Why would someone say that, right? And what we focus on is purely, almost purely intent, because that's far more important and easier to see, identify, and understand versus a whole bunch of different reasons. Because even those reasons that we give, I always give someone's going to blow up this building and you have to stop them, right? Okay, well, does knowing that they're, what God they worship or their political beliefs really going to help you? It's like, well, no, there's only so many ways you can blow up a building. So if I figure that out and I determine what someone's intent is here, right? And there's different examples we'll talk about, but I just kind of want to prove that's what we really, really try to focus on versus getting into ideology.
Brian, I think you should drill down a little bit further on that example, because you've used it so many times in class that sometimes we assume that everybody watching or listening has been to class or knows about it. What you're talking about is, let's say that we want to bring down a building. There's 9 ways that we can do that. One is tidal wave, tsunami, right?
Yeah.
So then we go to realistic. There's 4 ways. Okay, one is the explosive device, and one is this. But there's millions of reasons that a person might be motivated to tear down that building.
Right.
That's where my son died. That's where the insurance, policy was written. That
my
divorce
childhood
happened.
home was built on that ground. Yeah, whatever.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if people understand that, and people understand what you were talking about, the motive is sort of like a psychological insurance policy, right?
Yeah.
Because we're humans, and we can be crushed by things that happen in our environment. So we have to be able to turn those off and say, not my kid. That would never happen to me. Jimmy couldn't accomplish those. Intent means it happened. Okay. Motive, is that nebulous one where, we're sitting there looking at a person might have been in his thought process. And prosecution and defense use it equally. Prosecution wants to use it to show these are likely why this guy committed it, to help you understand that he did it and sway a jury. And then the defense wants to show, hey, there was no motivation. So if there is no motivation, there's no crime, right?
Yeah.
And motive doesn't matter. Motive matters not in the courtroom. It's just a ploy. It's just an emotional a way to hook people into thinking in a specific manner.
So let's get into, is kind of a definition of intent, and that's just basically the purpose for doing something, right? If you're
proven by significant steps. So a carjacking, the intent from the carjacking is you with a gun approached a running automobile occupied by, John Smith, and you said, "Get out of the car or I'll shoot you in the head," and then got in and drove it away. So the intent was clearly established by the circumstantial evidence that led up to you committing the crime. So the motive might have been everybody sitting around and going, "Holy shit, we don't have any more beer in the refrigerator. We should pull a crime." Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Right.
And the intent is getting up out of the chair and walking over to the intersection with your gun. So it's easier to understand it in comparison than in definition. So
I gotcha. Yeah.
I was in art class, and my intent was to make a pot, like Ghost, with Shelley
Yeah.
sitting behind me and going, "Hey, what are we doing?" Because she couldn't see. But we're spinning the clay, and my intent was to make that pot. But my motive was to mimic Native American design in my pot. So
Yeah.
it's two separate and distinct things, and that's why motive keeps getting pushed to the back. Let's worry about the intent. Significant steps, demonstrable steps taken in the furtherance of something.
Okay, yeah, no, and that's like you said, it's not just about a crime or something like that.
Yep.
I might be my house might be dirty, and that's motivating me to clean it. And
Yep.
if you're observing from a distance, and I'm putting things in a garbage bag, and I get up and I start walking outside towards where the dumpster is, my intent is,
Clearly,
you've
your intent
established,
has been established.
yeah, you've established my intent and drawn.
Whereas you're sitting on the couch smoking a bong and looking around and going, "This place is a filthy pigsty. I need to clean this up." And then you go back to your bong head and change the channel on the TV. Clearly, the motivation could be established, but the intent hasn't been.
Well, that's a good point to bring up. Like at no point do the guy sitting there on the couch just smoking a bowl has any intent.
Nope.
Never demonstrated any intent to do anything. And demonstrating intent is important, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
a clear distinction. Okay.
go one step further, just to street it up, Brian. When folks, Brian is an artist. Brian plays classical
You
guitar.
see the
You know what I'm trying to say? He painted that, folks, and you can see how clever it is. No, but if you're going to take a look at something from a dream catcher to a piece of mosaic, to any kind of thing that a person is doing, we look at it and we say, "What is that motif? Oh, that's a very dark whatever." Or we say, "Oh, that's lively," and it's what was that female artist from Arizona or New Mexico that did all the vaginas? You get what I'm trying to say?
yeah.
Her motif was that it was flowers, but we understand that that motif was suggestive of something. That motif, that's the etymology of motive. So take motive out of your mind. Stop thinking, and this is for our viewers and listeners. Stop thinking of the motive, because it doesn't matter to an accomplishment of a goal where the intent is a specific accomplishment of a goal.
Okay, that's kind of, I think, good way to summarize the definitions of them and what they mean, and understanding intent and motive. And one of the things I always I say, because this isn't just having to do with criminal cases inside of a
Yep.
courtroom or something, right? This is with everything. And I always try to use this in my understanding of social media, right? Because
Yes.
I think we take it for granted. We're on Facebook Live right now, and we have all these different types of social media, and everyone takes it for granted just how complicated this stuff really is, and how much information we're taking in. And that's my biggest, that's why I always have like I've got nothing. I have to take days off of even going on these things, because it's overwhelming to me, because I'm actually trying to understand what everyone's posting, so I don't have the time of the day
Yep.
to do all that, right? So, and what I mean by that is, a lot of outrage occurs. There's a lot of hyperbole on these things. There's a lot of people saying a lot of
Great
things they
use of the
probably
word hyperbole, Brian.
it's
Totally
one
true.
of the multisyllabic words I'm trying to work into my vocabulary. but the reason why, again, like I said, brother, there's a lot of that on there. There's a lot of noise, and I always tell people, well, try to determine what their intent is, not their motive behind posting something or saying something, not the psychology behind it, of what's going on in their head, or their different ideology behind it. It's what is their actual intent. And I think that's a good way to even question yourself, right? Meaning, all right, what is my intent? Someone sent me, a text message that pissed me off, and I'm going to respond to them. Well, what is my intent behind this? What is my intent behind this email I'm sending? What is the intent behind this social media post? What am I trying to do? Am I just adding to the noise, or am I adding some sort of value? And now everyone uses this stuff for different reasons, but I think it's a good way for you sitting here listening or watching this to kind of filter information a little bit. Does that make sense, Greg? And I know you're not on social media,
Yeah,
or
you're
you're on
spot on
LinkedIn,
again.
but but meaning like it's
Well,
there's no this isn't any
I
different than anything else. So if we determine intent versus motive, I think it's a better way to look at it.
No, you're exactly right on. And here's the thing: just because I absent myself from social media doesn't mean I don't understand the principle behind social media.
I would say you
I
probably understand it more than most people who use it.
and that's probably why I'm not on it.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's not draw that correlation yet. Okay, so Brian, in law, there's a thing called the felony murder rule, and every year, I do a instructor development on it.
I thought you were going to say a
Because
federal a
let's
felony
not talk
murder.
about that. Where's our attorneys when we need them? No, but seriously, Brian, the idea behind the felony murder rule is so misunderstood that every year since I've been alive and aware and writing, I've had to write something on it because people just don't understand it. And Wall Street Journal and
Well,
the Washington Post and everybody comes up, and they always have this one case where it's a tear-jerking case, and they
yeah.
bring it up. So the
Well,
felony murder rule
yeah,
simply
define it,
says
please. Yeah.
that listen, if you're involved in a crime that's a felony crime and you're participating actively in it, whether you were at the scene of the murder that occurred, the homicide that happened. So easiest way to think of it is a bank robbery's going on. Two guys go inside. One guy's left smoking, chain smoking, driving the car's puttering. Two guys inside rob the bank, come out, and they get in a getaway car and they leave. The security card in the bank was fine until that afternoon when he had an embolism, and the embolism was caused by the chemicals and the high heart stress rate and everything else. He goes into a coma, and 4 years later, he dies. Okay. Those people are guilty of murder. The people that robbed the bank are guilty of the murder because they were the proximate cause of the death. Now, before you even wrap your head around that, let's
Yeah.
back up to the guy that never went in the bank. All he was doing is sitting in the car. He knew or should have known that his actions were dangerous and that he contributed to the bank robbery. Therefore, he's as guilty as the principal, even as if he would have walked in and shot that guard in the head.
Yeah.
And guess what? The laws, and almost every state has a felony murder rule. It's very
Right.
rare not to. And you've got to understand that that's what you're talking about, is that if you folks follow me on this, if you hit like on something, are you endorsing everything that person is putting on social media? Because there's a lot of horse shit that's on social media
Yes.
that somebody regurgitates as theirs. So the easiest one to describe is the platitude where somebody takes somebody else's thing. Like yesterday was, if I'm correct, the anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. So you had
It
80,000
was.
Germans that died. You had 75,000 American soldiers that died. It was bitter cold. It's 9 degrees below zero, by the way, at Rogue Manor West. And there was so many people that were injured from that. That's a huge thing. One site on the only social media is LinkedIn, and I still don't understand LinkedIn, but because there's algorithms, right, which is ridiculous. But one site mentioned the Battle of the Bulge. I would have thought that that was the perfect time for somebody to say, time now is not so different as time then. Take a look at the stresses that people were under, or hey, Spanish flu and the mask
Yeah,
wearing and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
This should be a place where intellectuals trade ideas and share instances where people could draw, rather than hyperbole, a life message out of it. And Brian, it's not. It's the poster of the cat, hang in there, and then 30,000 likes. And I told you this before, and this is what pisses me off. I'll write something that I think is profound about a topic, and I'm not profound, folks. Don't think I profess to be, but I think it's a thought piece, a real think piece, and I'll put it out there, and I'll get 3 guys that respond to it. It's you, Shelley, and Sean Clements, right? But then somebody puts out there, hey, folks, just try your best today, and a picture of a dog, and it's got 300 million hits. It's Gangnam Style by
Well,
noon. It's horse crap.
well, yeah, but I mean that's kind of that gets into that how social media is designed to play to us. But
Certainly,
I
but what
think
I'm trying to say is that motive or is that intent? If your intent to get on is to get hits and follow the
well,
algorithm,
that's exactly it.
totally got it. but that's a science project. That's not changing. That's not moving the dial for
No, no,
life.
no, and that's I would say that's when their motive and their intent line up right there is for folks when you get into social media about people trying to get a lot of likes and shares and just create a lot of buzz about something.
Yep.
That's the whole point behind those things. I just want more likes and followers, and I can get my dopamine, or I can sell my wares, or whatever
Or get an
the reason.
advertising dollar or something else, but that's the least
Yeah, but
worthwhile
here's
motivation.
the question I have, because you know you did the example of like what you talked about the felony murder rule, and how
Yeah,
you're saying like, hang on, I can drive my buddy, and I think he's just going to go in and grab a case of beer and run out. But then when he grabs a case of beer and starts running, and the guy sees it and chases him and falls, and you know, busts his head open or grabs him, or my buddy hits him and doesn't even know he accidentally killed him, and then now I'm driving him away, and you're saying I can get charged with murder or felony murder, and you can, and those are that, but that's a good example of a rare kind of situation, or an almost an kind of that law is an anomaly, right? Normally you have to, I mean, meaning that's
I hear what you're
unusual.
saying,
No, no, I
but
mean
it
it's
happens more. It
no,
certainly
no,
is an
it,
anomaly, but it happens more than you would think.
no, no, it happens all the time. I meant that type of a
Yep.
law, right? That's a
Yep.
little bit different. Whereas that's because you're really what that law was meant for was to get everyone in there who was responsible for that to be able to be charged for the most serious offense, to help deter crime and put people away. Like you can't just,
Precisely.
that there's reasons behind that, but all good. Like I agree with the law. I'm saying, what I'm saying is that's kind of a little bit different than how most laws are. But to get into the motive and intent stuff, why does everyone care so much about people's motives, right? And this is
Yep.
huge. This isn't just in a courtroom, right, with a prosecutor trying to explain to a jury why someone would do that in order for them to somehow relate and see and make that link in their head, right? Because I think that's part of the reason why, if I'm sitting here on a jury, I know nothing about crime or criminals or anything from other than what I see on TV and the news. And then you as a prosecutor has to sit there and say, well, look, here's why he did it. He was so angry that she was cheating on him, and this occurred, and then that occurred, and then he walked in and he experienced this, and that way the juror can sit there and go, man, that would make me really angry too, or whatever right, so
Yeah,
they
you're right.
can make sense of the case. but you know, we go into this, it's not just about that, it's motive for everything. It's, why would someone do that? Why would they post this? Why would they go kill themselves? Why would they shoot up a school? What's that? When we go into and then you get the million big brain folks who do a really good job of analyzing stuff and studying and go, well, look at, there's all these different factors, and they felt like they were wronged, and then they were part of this group, and this group believes that, and we go down a rabbit hole of these, I mean, just books and lectures and degrees and this stuff, but and that may be important in certain cases for the purposes of understanding a greater phenomena. But if it doesn't necessarily help us, well, it doesn't ever help stop the stuff, but it kind of can
Right.
muddy the waters or make it more confusing. Does that
Uh,
make sense?
yeah. So you ask all the right questions,
Did
and
I
I
even
think
ask a
that
question? And
yeah,
I'm
you
sure
you really did
it's
at the very
early in the
beginning.
morning, so
Yeah, exactly. Don't let the lighting fool you, folks. It's still dark out.
yeah.
So what I just wrote down while you were talking about that is psychological, physiological, and social. Now I could go off on a tangent, but let's just say that you're sitting at home or driving into work, and you look at those three: psychological, physiological, and social. And then you can add a word like need or necessity or urge or whatever at the end of those or at the beginning of those. So let's take a look at a couple of cases that happened in 2020 from the same lens of criminal intent. And then let's try to talk about your social media link. Amber Geiger, Dallas copper,
Yeah.
kills Botham Jean in Botham Jean's apartment. Botham Jean did nothing wrong. He was sitting there watching the news. Now, if we take a look at the intent, there was no intent. Amber Geiger did not contrive a plan and say, I'm going to find a black man alone in his apartment
And I'm
and
gonna go
burst
kill
through
him.
the
Right.
door and then try to say that it had nothing to do with him, that it mirrored my apartment. But does that solve our psychological problem? No. If I'm a black American and specifically a male sitting watching a football game in my apartment, I've got to think that every time there's something in a hallway, somebody might burst through the door. And specifically because it was a cop, that's going to hit me psychologically. Physiologically, I'm going to have trouble sleeping, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm going to be thinking that every time that I'm out with my friends and I see a set of red and blues come in behind me, even if
Yeah.
they're responding to an emergency call, maybe that's my death sentence. And then socially, it's going to change how I interact with the police, not only in Dallas. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And what about my parents' reaction to police or the coroner or any
Yeah.
government? So now you have all of these different aspects of the crime where no intent was established. That's why motive is important. Let's do another one, okay? And it's the
Well,
opposite
no,
end.
no, no, that is good. So real quick too, that was just so everyone is familiar.
Yeah,
That was Amber Geiger was the off-duty police officer down in Dallas, walked into the wrong apartment, what she thought was hers, and oh my God, there's a guy in there. She has no idea. Immediately thinks the worst, so she
yep,
ends up killing him, and then realizes, holy crap, I'm in the wrong apartment, and her life is over. Her career is over. She's
his
devastated.
certainly
Botham
is.
John is dead, and for literally doing nothing wrong, and it's a horribly tragic case, and
Yep.
it truly is a tragedy. And then look at what happens. So you just broke down between psychological, physiological, and social factors that all occur to everyone who heard that case. Meaning, I just want to drive that point home. You brought it
Yes.
down as psychological, physiological, social factors of what happens, and that's everyone. If you heard about that case, everything Greg just described happened to you or someone or had that feeling, or especially like you was the black community in the United States. Same thing. They just went, Jesus, here we go again.
And then the
And
world. Yeah,
and
you're
and the
exactly
whole
right.
world. So I just wanted to highlight those
No,
things a
no,
little
no.
bit. So
So let me give you one more for comparative
yeah,
analysis,
for
because what
comparison,
we
yeah.
want to do, we don't want to approach it emotionally. We want to approach it scientifically. We want to approach it legally, morally, ethically. So you have Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael. They're part of their own neighborhood watch program, and they see Ahmed Arbery, who was jogging and then
Yep.
stops at a job site under construction, then continues his run, and Greg and Travis decide a crime has been committed, and they decide to become judge and jury and chase him down. Now they chase him down with V8 engine vehicle on a public road, both carrying guns, one in the bed of the truck. Brian, they knew or should have known that it was not just going to be judge jury, it was going to be executioner. And so Ahmed Arbery is dead because of it, and therefore intent is established. Now, if we take a look from the psychological, the physiological, and social, psychologically, Greg and his son Travis had exceeded their human performance on that day by being convinced that he was so wrong that they were going to stop him no matter what the cost. And that turns into a homicide. That turns a property crime into a homicide. Physiologically, you have the fear that Ahmed Arbery must have felt
Yeah.
that day
Being
when he's
chased.
accosted by people. I don't give a shit what the color is, but you
No,
got people squealing up like Dukes of
I would
Hazzard,
have been
jumping out of
terrified.
vehicles with guns. I'm still terrified of thinking
Yeah.
of that. And then the social, what gives you the right, sir, in a day where there is a law to go to this posse comitatus act and think that you can get your neighborhood watch motivated to go against a human or a race of humans or a sect of people. So here you got Amber Geiger where there was no intent, but I had those same real issues, Brian. And then you got Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael and Ahmed Arbery, where there was intent, there was specific intent, and as opposed to general for the legal. But what you have is both there, the psychological, physiological, and social again attached. So why, to answer your question, do we have motive? Because I have to get up and get my kids ready for school and eat my breakfast and go to work and do the best job I can. And I have to believe in my heart, Brian, that this wouldn't affect me, that I'm somehow different, that the world isn't this scary place. So it's again a psychological insurance policy against these unknown evils. And you're saying, yeah, using motive to specify a crime. I'm saying we use motive all the time, saying this couldn't happen to me, not in my America, not in my Dallas, and that's what makes it hurt so bad. Is because motive is emotion based. You see,
Well,
it is
that's
physiological and
that's a great
social.
point. So when you said motive, there's a couple things I want to hit on that you said, but
Yeah,
let's just go right to that. You said motive is emotion based, and that feeling, and there's a great, I I'm gonna start bashing on people again, but so there's different
What you do.
experience. There's different experiences people pay money to go through that mimic like military style training. I'll leave it at that. So they're not actually in the military. They don't have to sign up. They don't have to serve. They don't have to fight. They don't have to do anything, but they can have this cool experience, right? And it's supposed to do a number of things for them, and one of the things is, oh, I felt like I accomplished so much, I felt like I had this thing, I felt. And I always tell people, I go, man, that's the perfect way to describe that. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, oh, you felt like you accomplished and did something. But you didn't do anything. Like, you didn't do any of the hard stuff. You just had this little experience. And so you just talked about motive into emotion, and that's important, because we want to go, my kid wouldn't do that, my
Yep.
neighbor would never do that, or why would someone do that? And that's for them, oh, it's because of this. They were bullied and they finally had enough and then they snapped. Okay, well, I can understand that. So that makes sense. When in fact, these cases are a lot more complicated than that, or in some ways
A
more
lot
simple
more.
than people want to make it,
Yep.
right? So depending on what the case is. But so it's always important to understand that we try to take that emotion out of it. If you take the emotion out of it and look at whatever the actual what's going on here, and again, I relate this right back to reading something on Facebook. If it's making you get
Exactly.
emotional about it, that's the intent or the purpose behind it, right? That's what that person's trying to do. They're trying to get you upset. So if you take that out and then take a look at what's actually you're reading, it might make a little bit more sense. But one of the lines you said when you were talking about specifically the Ahmaud Arbery case, I can't remember those two guys' names, doesn't matter, but you said
McMichaels.
McMichaels, that's what it is. You said they knew or should have known. That's an important, that kind of has a legal definition to it in a sense, right? What do you mean by they knew or should have known?
It's another great question, Brian. So let's put it in terms of probation or parole. You've committed a crime, you've done your time, and now you're going out of the jail cell, and the judge that's allowing you out says, here are the conditions of your parole or probation. You shall not smoke or drink. You shall not carry a gun. You shall not associate with other felons. You shall not go to a bar. The reason that they do that is those are high risk behaviors or high risk areas. And they know that you've already demonstrated that you can't hold your shit together when you're drinking or with a gun or, going to the liquor store to buy your smokes, right? So the judge, the probation officer, the parole, the condition setters are trying to give you the best chance by pulling those in and taking those away from you. Because when you stick that gun in your back pocket, you know or should have known that when you get involved in a scrum, that gun may come into play, and that guns are used to kill. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And so don't tell me later, well, I stuck the gun in my pocket and went to the 7-Eleven, but I never intended to use it. There's your intent. It doesn't matter that you did or didn't intend to use it. You had the means and you took a significant step towards doing something by going there. People say that all the time. And Brian, here's a motive and intent. Okay, so you intended to have a gun by your bed in case somebody broke into your house and it was
Hmm.
a loaded gun and you put it in your drawer. Okay, your motivation
What
was
were you?
never to
Are you
have
in
your
my
kid.
bedroom right now?
Yeah, I wish, eh?
Tell McKaylee to
But
wake up.
exactly, run everyone. But the idea is your intent never led, nor the motivation that you felt never led to your kid going in and starting that 38 and blowing their brains out. But afterwards, it's too late. You knew or
Right.
you should have known that loaded gun in that area was accessible to your kids. So don't come back to me later and say that, who would have thought? Well, I would have thought. Do you get what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say? And then you say, well, putting it on top of the refrigerator. Oh, you mean next to the cookie jar and the gosh damn chips? So the idea is we don't always, because we're human and we have faults, and we don't always think things clearly through. We don't spiral them out and see what might happen. And because of that, Brian, we sometimes contribute to the manner in which a crime occurs. So if I knew or should have known something, then I am adult and mature enough to know better, and it shouldn't have happened in the first place. So there are excuses, for example, the whole reason that murder. Yeah, you've got murder 1, 2, 3. You've got heat of passion, where you weren't thinking clearly, and you walk
Right.
in on an event, and the blood didn't cool yet. So the law even understands that. But when it comes to stuff that's so egregiously stupid, they'll always add that you knew better, and that's the knew or should have known in the language of the law.
No, and that's a good point to bring up too about even how you said the law accounts for those things, meaning it understands that
It
emotion
does.
plays a huge part in behavior and intent and motive and all that. So meaning they go, yeah, like that we, planning out someone's homicide over a course of time, then doing that is much different than, you said something to me, we got so angry, we got in a fight, and I killed you in that
Yep.
fight. Those are two completely different circumstances, and the law understands that. It says, well, one, there was clearly established intent. Two, this person, two people who never met each other and just got in a car accident and fought over it, there was no intent on either end to actually, go out and kill someone that day. So there's a clear distinction.
But there should be a semicolon. And let me throw this at you. And you know me, I like piling on. I like
Yeah.
making people think, and specifically early in the morning. So Louisville police killed Breonna Taylor. No
Hmm.
matter what else that you need to know, the Louisville police were the proximate cause of Breonna Taylor's death. So whether you care that she knew that there was drug dealing, she was part of the deal, she was this or that, and the color of the officer, the color of the suspect, there was no intent. Louisville police never sat around and said, "We're going to hit this house because we know Breonna Taylor is asleep inside, and while flinging lead down the hallway, we're going to hope that we kill her. That's our intent." That never happened. But Brian, the semicolon, the afterwards, psychological, physiological, social, doesn't make it any easier to swallow. Because now all of a sudden, me in my own home with my kids,
Yeah,
thinking that,
it's
police
terrifying.
with a search warrant, with a no knock and stuff, I'm terrified. And it was never the intent of the police. And even when the police described it, remember, police had to go to a judge with artifacts and evidence in support of a reasonable conclusion, and the judge had to read it and sign off on that warrant and allow it. Bad things happen. So when bad things happen, we have to look at intent, because it'll make it easier to swallow. It's hard. Breonna Taylor's dead. She'll never be with us again.
Yeah,
And
it's
whatever her lifestyle was, that she never deserved a death sentence for
right,
what she's doing. You see what I mean? So
right.
so the motive doesn't help me feel better or sleep at night, okay, unless I attach an emotional thing to it. That could never happen to me. Do you see what
So
I'm trying to say? I
no, no,
have
no,
to
and
create a bad guy in a situation so I feel like I'm getting away with something, you know?
yeah, 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 no, and this is why we go into determining intent, and that's why I always tell people is try to determine what someone's intent was. Was it like, and
Yes.
you gave the Breonna Taylor case, and again, it's another horrible tragedy that's
Horrible.
terrifying to think that you could, and even though there's steps that the police have to go through to even get a warrant to get in your house, and that has to be
Yep.
signed off. Now that judge and all those people involved in that, they're not on the hook for this. You know what I'm saying? But who is? It's the people that had to go execute that warrant. But that's kind of a different, I don't want to go down that path because you did bring up something.
No, but 30,000 foot,
Yeah,
Brian.
no,
You
it's
know,
the same thing. Established intent. What was their intent? You nailed it. You said, did the police, was their intent to go in and kill Breonna Taylor? Well, no, absolutely not. That wasn't their intent. But did it occur? And are they responsible for what
yep,
occurred? Well, yeah,
yep.
that's not what we're talking about here. But and that's why I want people to understand intent and motive and some of the other terms that I want you to define here in a second, because I
Sure.
think you can look at anyone's behavior that way. Don't just look at what they're saying, right? Because words do have meaning, yes,
Words
but
hurt, man.
they've only been around so long, and words do
Right.
hurt you, so it may be emotional, but that person may, the meaning that troll on Twitter who has tens or hundreds of thousands of followers or whatever, they actually may never intend to leave their mother's basement. You know what I'm saying? Now
You're
they're
right.
creating this world. So but one of the terms you brought up, I like you to define, because it's important to understand, as you said, proximate cause.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in all these different situations, I don't care what it is, there's always more contributing factors than people want to really account for sometimes, right? So there's a lot of, you brought up the Breonna Taylor case or the George Floyd case or whatever these cases are, I know, but there's a lot of contributing factors. And then but that's a difference between contributing factors and proximate cause. So could you give us a little,
Yeah,
using
yeah.
those terms, kind of
So
definition and
an easy
comparison?
way of thinking. Now you're right on again, Brian, and I apologize for accelerating past sometimes. The street definition, let's put it that way. When I'm dealing with approximate cause, I'm saying that absent this act, tool, job, thought, motion, this other thing would have never happened. So had it not been for you, exceeding the red line of your car in a street drag race, you would have never lost control and spun it out into the crowd, killing my client. Had you not chain smoked for 14 years, you know what I'm saying, before you decided to swim the English Channel, all of those factors, absent this one thing, would never have occurred. So the proximate cause is that linchpin, that key thing that created the avalanche that followed and that caused damage. So think of it as the opposite side of the coin of vicarious. So vicarious liability means, dude, you're the one that sold the guy the cigarettes. You're the one that overserved the drunk driver. Do you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? So vicariously, that's the I knew or should have known side of the street, where proximate is it was this factor right here. You forgot to put the washer under the bolt when you put this together, and that's why that broke and killed your kid. So I'll give you a simple one from Detroit. They used to call the part of the back deck of the car where your speakers are. They used to call it the rear shelf. And a person put on that rear shelf an item that was heavy and round, a bowling ball. And when the people locked up the brakes, that bowling ball came forward and killed the passenger. There's a huge lawsuit.
Holy cow.
The other one is inside the bathroom. You pull down those hand dryers, the old style hand dryer, and a person hung themselves on it, screwing around, and now all of them have to say here. Those are proximate cause things. Okay, so the person that built it is vicariously liable, but the proximate cause was, had you not stood on that thing and stuck your head in there, you probably wouldn't have got hurt. So that's as best a street definition I think as I can get.
Okay, yeah. So that's a good one, or a bunch of different examples, or whatever that whatever occurred, whatever small event occurred during that, had it not been for that, these other things wouldn't have happened. That would be proximate
Yep.
cause. But again, with that, like, there's also contributing factors, right? So contributing
Yes.
factors are things that influence the outcome of that situation, I guess, and or help that situation to arise, right? So people, especially when you get into stuff like crime and why things occur, and hey, this person was killed during the commission of this crime or whatever happened. It's like, well, there's a lot of contributing factors to crime in general, right? It's not just that
Yes.
person just leaves their job and then walks out and goes, yeah, I'm gonna go rob that liquor store, and then accidentally kills the guy in the robbery, right? Maybe that person grew up in a really bad neighborhood, no parents, no supervision, was involved with
Low
gangs.
impulse
Yeah.
control.
Oh, yeah.
Physiologically,
Low
they had
level
a
emotional
medical.
maturity. Yeah.
Yes.
Biologically, hey, whatever
Yes.
happened, they had a brain injury as a child, and it's like those are all contributing factors. But
Yep.
that need to be discussed. But and those are important to understand in all of these cases. So to bring it back to just because you brought up those terms, so I wanted you to define them. So I appreciate that, because we need to understand when we look at some of these, the proximate cause, and then there's other contributing factors to these
But
situations.
and also too, Brian, remember the contributing factors are much more on the civil lawsuit side. In the crime, they're not going to bring up any of those contributing factors until sentencing, and they're going to say, "Well, we're going to give you this sentence after you've been convicted because you knew or should have known, but we understand that you grew up in an urban environment with these things against you, so we're going to take that in consideration and grant you parole at this year." Civil lawsuits are huge, but remember, the crime really doesn't care about the contributing factors unless they want to add intent to another crime, like a conspiracy to commit something. So it doesn't make it less of a crime. I say to people, look at your example, Brian, that you were talking about with those folks that tried to equate a military experience when they weren't military and didn't do all the peripherals that military people do. The 4 years of active duty for the 9 days of intense fear,
Yeah.
firefight, explosions, and dead bodies, right? People don't think about it like that. So I'll give you an equation. So I was talking to a person when you and I were in Columbus, Georgia, and the person had just come out of a zombie run, and I didn't know what that was. And over a beer, we were asking the person. They said, "Well, certain people dress up like zombies, and as you do this run, the 2K, they jump out and they chase you, and everybody has paintball guns, and they throw paint on each other, and it's fun." And they say, "Wow, it was really intense." Yeah, chemically, it was really intense. But would that prepare you for a zombie apocalypse? Not so much.
Yeah.
And compare that to the Florida zombie. You want to talk about a good case just a couple of years ago. There was a guy that decided to go to a street fair, left his home with his Bible, fully dressed and having a good time. On the way somewhere, his car broke down. He left his Bible in the car and went and tried to eat a homeless person, and the cops had to shoot him in the head. And still to this day, nobody knows what motivated the Florida zombie. But we understand the intent if we go point to point to point in his trip from his home till the time that the police shot him. So that balancing act, Brian, is hugely important. And what I would say is training helps you separate both of them.
Well,
Like, it's supposed to, but
yeah.
life gives us many examples every day of when it goes wrong.
Yeah, so this would be understanding everything we talked about and these different cases, and how the question is then, which is a hard question, right? This isn't going to be answered on this podcast because you have to talk about specific examples. Is determining someone's intent. How do I determine what someone's intent is? Now that's everything that we talk about, ever. That's what we do, right? We help people determine intent. So bringing it to, like, I mean, something as simple as a social media post, or something someone says, you hear in a conversation, or something you see on the news or an interview, whatever that is, like, how do I sit there and go, how do I determine someone's intent, Greg?
Yeah.
What is that point?
So
Or why do I even need to do that? Why does that help me?
I will give you a preamble that I'm no subject matter expert on social media, but I will
Right.
tell you this. Okay, there's different types of social media, and you should put them in bins. And there's a very good friend of ours that delves into social media now, and his intent is so foggy. I would tell him to back off for a minute and take a look. If you're posting an article that somebody else wrote and then asking people what their opinion on it is, it's not newsworthy. You get what I'm saying? I don't know what your end goal is,
I
but
get.
stop. So that's one. Okay, that's one box. That's one ice cube tray that I would put stuff into. The next one is doing something like, when I grew up, I broke my leg and couldn't ride my bike, and I was watching all the other kids ride their bike, and it made me really sad. What was a sad thing that happened when you grew up, and how did you get through it? That's the second one. Do you get what I'm trying to say? For the love of God, that's the plot for a talk
Well,
show. Just grab any D celebrity and put them on in there.
yeah.
Am I starting to define social media for you? The other is the sniper, and we call him a sniper because the sniper
Yeah.
is the person that shoots from a hidden place to create damage or cause havoc. And that's the one where somebody writes something. I just read one last night. I tell you right away, I don't understand LinkedIn. It was the first shift of all female officers for this small town, and they were very proud of it, and they posted it. And here come the pundits. Here come the ass bags saying, "Oh, you got to take the female out of the equation, and it's nothing but this. And the first time that we don't talk about black is the time that we'll overcome racism." Listen, if you're white and you're writing that, stop. Just stop for just a minute, because you don't understand the argument fully. Do you get what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? And so what happens, Brian, is people want their say, not necessarily their way. And social media gives everybody the chance to have their say. And that's not what a democracy is. A democracy is we all want to be able to be free to do those things that are guaranteed in the Constitution. And we elect a small number of people to make sure that it goes off that way, because we want to have small government and not a lot of intrusion. But then we come to social media, and social media is filled with a bunch of assholes that know the answers to everything. When did that start? When did you not have to
Well,
go and go to school or be a PhD
no, no,
to
no.
your opinion?
It's the well, it's been around in other forms for a long time, right? And this
Certainly,
goes back
certainly
to
it has.
when we did the an episode where one of the things we talked about was the invention of the printing press in 1450 by my
Yes.
second favorite Gutenberg, Johann. He's only second to Steve, but
Steve was the one that did the posted the thing on the church. For those that don't know,
I think that was Marty.
Marty,
So
Steve's brother.
so no, but the idea is when you have an increase in quantity, right? A rapid increase in quantity of whatever, what's that likely going to do to the quality, right? So the same thing with the invention of the printing press. You had a rapid increase in quantity of literature and books and words and and stories and whatever. So automatically, when you remove any barriers, right, you remove obstacles to something, it's easier to get there. So
Graffiti.
so
Graffiti
yeah,
is the
that's what I'm
perfect
saying.
example. I can sneak up on a building with a can of paint and I can say this place blows, and I don't have to be accountable for that. And
So
and I'm not talking First Amendment, nor are you, Brian.
no,
We're
I
talking about intent.
yeah, and then that's what I mean. It's everyone gets to have their say. So regardless of how valuable it is, what it is that you're saying or how informed it is, right? And that's fine. That's good. That's what you want an open society to have. Everyone has their say, okay? And then the
Right.
good ideas will stick around for a little while. The bad ideas
That's
will
the
kind of float,
difference.
kind of go to the bottom and say, and then they'll come back every once in a while, but they can't swim, so they sink, right? And then and only the kind of the best ideas will stick around, hopefully. But the idea is that that's how I approach these, and I tell people to approach these is what is someone's intent and what is your intent, right? Do you want to add value to the situation, or you just want to add noise to the situation?
That's
And
it.
most people just want to add noise. And you broke it down in a couple different ways too. Like it's that's the ultimate way to get response out of people without having to put in a lot of work, right? Well, what do you think? Or did you see this? It's like, well, no, at least give a line or two of your own opinion on it before you post it. You know what
Precisely.
I'm saying?
And
But
remember, opinion testimony is a very specific type of testimony too.
and so I always look at it too is exactly that, is what is this person's intent behind it. So most of the time it's just there really almost is no intent. They're just sharing things because that's what this platform is meant for, and that's what they've been doing, and you're so used to it that they don't even realize what they're sharing is complete junk sometimes, or not news, or not worthy of it, or not valuable enough to take up someone else's time. So I always like to do that and understand intent versus motive and apply that to information,
Yes.
right? I mean, just apply that to a conversation someone has, an action someone takes, what it is, and just if you sit there and ask you, well, what is their actual intent behind this? And I've done that with people who've tried to snipe at, they were sniping at our Instagram account. They were just really bad shots, I guess, to continue with that analogy, because they're just they the one guy said, oh, he went off down this rabbit hole of explanation of what they said, and my answer is always, hey, here was our intent behind this post. And then they try to send you, well, no, that's not what you meant. I said, no, you may have taken it this way,
Yep.
but this is what our intent was. And then they actually screenshotted the post and wrote a bunch of stuff on there with arrows and circles and sent it to me. He's like, see, this is what you meant by it. And my response was, you literally drew an unreasonable conclusion. Normally that happens
Not
metaphorically,
just
but
figuratively.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
actually drew in an unreasonable conclusion. And that person just couldn't get it past them that, what our intent, and it's important to understand, because I think it helps with, it helps with misunderstandings, right? Like, communication is tough. Communication is really, really difficult when you're face to face with someone, let alone put in all these different steps behind that. Well, now I'm not in the same room as them. Well, now I can't see them. Well, now I'm in a private account that doesn't even have my real name, so I'm completely anonymous. So you have all these steps. So that type of communication is really, really difficult. So I use that even in conversation with McKaylee, with my wife, when something comes up, or we're like, dude, we've been so stressed at this end of this year because we had so much going on. Then we had to move. Then we had to sell the house. Then we're doing this. And it's like one thing after another. And then we get this going on. And so I always say, when she says something and it's like kind of pisses me off, or I was like, what the hell was that supposed to mean? And then I have to stop and take a breath and go, wait, what was her intent behind saying that? It's like, oh, she's trying to get me to do this first before I go do that, because this is bothering her over here. Move all this junk over here. Whatever it is. And I think it's just it's another gating mechanism to use to understand, or communicate better, I think, with other people. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's what I try to use
I,
it for.
I like it, and I don't know about any of the Instagram or Twitter or any of that other stuff, but folks, if you're on there, maybe we're not your bandwidth, so go somewhere else. But the idea is that we're
That
trying to
that
stimulate
that
meaningful
may be an issue
conversation.
too, Greg, for us, because
Yeah.
I often, the do tell people, hey, you just unfollow us. Just
Yeah,
hit the
exactly.
unfollow
We're
button.
not for you. But I would caution those folks to take a look at this. How many letters are there in, for example, the English alphabet? And if we take a look at that and then we compare it to how many emojis are there to try to cast an emotion to those letters with which you can create words, sentences, then paragraphs, then thoughts and ideas. And I would say caution, danger warning, Will Robinson. Most likely course of action, most dangerous course of action. Consider just those two, ML and MV before you hit send. Just next time, before you decide that you're going to hit send, make sure you take that deep breath, the gift of time and distance, and look at it and go, hey, what was my intent? What was my intent when I wrote this? And
No,
is it
because
the
actually,
same now?
no, and that's what actually Shea Stadium is following along on Facebook Live, buddy, and he said same thing because even usually intent is good, but even that can get misinterpreted, right?
Yep,
And I think that's important too. I always do the on Twitter especially. My comment is, did you earn your tweet? Meaning,
that's great.
did you earn those words that you're about to say? Meaning, where do you get that opinion from? Is that an informed opinion? Is your response really critical? Is it are you adding value to the situation, or are you just adding noise? And I think those are good ways to kind of look at it. Um, I don't know. That's the emoji thing is a perfect example of communication because we lack context, and that gets into adding context to someone's message. And as much context as you can put around something, the more likely your message is to get through with whatever the intent
Meaning.
was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, whatever you meant it, I have to add context to it, right? That's that Key and Peele sketch. I is the best one on Comedy Central where they're texting each other. One dude's just chilling on his couch, like, "Yeah, cool, man, let's meet up." And the other's like, "Cool, man, what? We had plans." So one's getting all pissed off, one's like smoking a bowl on the couch, like all excited.
You
So
got it.
so I think that's
Don't
a
let
good
this
point.
text message turn into a homicide.
Exactly. So what else do we need to understand about intent, Greg? Because we've talked about it in chunks in different podcasts and talks and in class all the time because intent is kind of very well, not specific to human behavior, but it is what makes human behavior kind of able to be articulated, right? I mean, because it's not thoughts and feelings and this, it's more action, right? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
just remember, especially around the holidays, but you are wearing a jacket with a statement or a hat or sitting in a specific chair. Everything that you do broadcasts to the rest of the world socially, psychologically, and sometimes physiologically a message. And you may not intend to send that message, but the message is still clear to other people, even though it wasn't your intent.
Yes.
So take the gift of time and distance, look in the mirror, think about what you're about to say, give it an extra split second, nanosecond. Before you do or say something or get involved in something and stick your nose somewhere, just think, hey, what's my intent right now? And how could it be misattributed? How could it be mistaken? And what might I do to fix that?
Well, critical thinking and taking into account the second and third order effects of your actions is I wish there was a lot more of that, right? But
Well, no,
that's
there,
a good I think that's a good point and I kind of literally just almost another way of describing what I said for people on Twitter. Did you earn your tweet, right? What is
I
the
love it.
intent? What is the message I'm trying to send? And I think that's a good place to start because to at least avoid confusion on your end or potential miscommunication, which is
Yep.
important. But I think we kind of covered a lot today, and we have some good terms in there. We did
A
cover,
lot more to talk about.
the proximate cause and contributing factors. I mean, we should probably do a whole nother podcast on just that because that's huge, and those often get. I think that's also why we kind of go down the ideology rabbit hole or different, talking points where they said, well, this is the main reason, this is why it happened. And where we can sit there and go, well, no, that was a contributing factor to it, but there
Right.
was a number of contributing factors to it, so I think that's another one we should do on it. So that's I think that's a good place to wrap. Greg, any final comments?
No, take that extra split second. Your life may depend on it.
Yep. So everyone listening, hope you had a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and you survived, and that that family is good. So don't forget, everyone, that training changes behavior.